review of, it says review of IRB submission and procedures. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there's some things that the students need to be mindful of from the outset. Okay. One of those things is they got to have the project proposal part of their candidacy done, and they got to have it really airtight, because if they do, then many of the questions asked on the IRB application are really copy and paste. The answers are copy and pasted from their candidacy review packet. If they have not spent the time really hammering that home, getting that to a place where it is ready to rock and roll, they're going to be honest with you, they're going to have a hard time doing the IRB application, because what's going to happen, they're going to sit there at the application creating things that they should have already created for their project proposal. So I tell them all the time, you got to nail that abstract, that initial abstract. You got to get that project overview together, and you got to get your project calendar. You're going to see it again on your IRB application.
Okay.
Here's the thing: their IRB applications are due no later than 2 weeks after their semester 4 intensive. Okay.
Okay.
Now the demand manual already says that the students have to turn in their candidacy review packets on September 15th of their 4th semester or February 15th. I tell them all the time, you might as well be prepared to turn in your IRB application at the same time. So that way, you've done both, and you've started the clock to running for us to respond to you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yes, that's that one. Let me see what else. Yeah. All right. So what I did, I screenshotted what is going on here on my phone. It's just being annoying now. All right. I screenshotted the IRB application, and so that I could walk students through. The first two sections, section 1 or 2, really are asking them, do they agree to abide by the rules? All right. And are they going to implement their project in multiple locations? I've been discouraging students from doing that because of just the logistical headache of keeping all their data separate and distinct. And so I've been telling those students that have multiple charges to either pick a charge to use, or plan to hold your project in a neutral territory, so that all the people from all your charges can come and be a part of. The third section is the demographic section. That's where they ask the student's name, the mentor's name, the consultant's name, the address and telephone number and email of the place where you're going to be implementing the project, and their project calendar. Again, not the project calendar, their start and ending dates of their final project. Again, all demographic information, nothing hard. So I don't even have a screen for it, because if someone can't figure out what their name is, then we got a bigger problem. we got a bigger problem. Where the rubber hits the road is right here in section 4. The first question that section 4 asks them for is, it asks them to list give their hypothesis. All right. One of the things that I've noticed is that many times the students are giving me almost a mini paper on their hypothesis. They're telling me all these things that happened or occurred by this period of time, yada yada yada. And I really never get the hypothesis. I keep telling them the hypothesis is a one sentence if then statement.
Mm-hmm.
If these conditions are met over here, then this result will happen over there. And so in this first question, all they got to do is just list the hypothesis. Again, I tell them all the time, because I've been doing this for a while, I can figure out what their project basically is if they write the hypothesis correctly. You know, a person that's doing this does not need an explanation of your hypothesis. Your hypothesis is the explanation.
Right.
And so they're going to put down, again, if they've nailed their candidacy review, this is copying and pasting from the project proposal section into your IRB application. Okay. Come on now. The next question is asking, what's the problem your hypothesis solves? In other words, that's a poorly written request. It's really asking, what is your problem statement?
Right.
Again, don't need a problem paragraph, problem paper, problem project. I just need a problem statement. In one sentence, the problem in my context is boom. All right. And again, because in their hypothesis, in fact, I wish I had thought about doing it this semester, but I am going to do it next semester for semester 3. I'm going in the fall. We're going to already be doing the abstracts, but to help the semester 3s coming up, I'm going to do a class with them, a supplemental class, where they understand what all should go into their abstracts. Mm-hmm. And so again, if they follow the steps I'm going to give them, then they'll know what their problem statement is, what the hypothesis is, and other things. Again, they would just copy and paste it right there. The next question that is asked on the in section 4 is for them to give a project calendar. All right. In other words, they're going to tell us what they are doing during each module of their project, and they're going to tell us how much time they are planning to give or dedicate to everything they're doing in their final project. In fact, let me do it. I just realized, let me see if I can maximize this so you can see it better. Okay, that may be better. It may not.
That's better.
Okay, amen. And so I tell them all the time, don't recreate the wheel. You list your project calendar just like the example right here. All right. So like week 1, 10 minutes to take pre-surveys, 15 minutes to create a journal entry. I think this is, you use it, you know what I'm saying? And so I tell them, all right, so 5-10 minutes introduction of you, 5-10 minutes introduction of the project, as well as the articulation of rights and expectations and responsibilities of the principal investigator and the project participant. 30 to 45 minutes focused teaching, 20-30 minutes group discussion, 10 minutes wrap up questions, assignment of homework, 5 minutes closing, ending prayer. All right. And so they're going to do that for each module. They're going to go through and tell us what they're doing and how much time they're dedicating to each module. And they're going to put it in the same form that is right here on the paper. They don't on the IRB. Don't recreate the wheel. You know what I'm saying? Just go with what we asked for. Yeah. The last question on section 4 is project verifiability. How do you know that your project is going to accomplish the goal or the objective that it's set out to accomplish? Okay. Many students, when they've answered this, have answered it like this. Well, I expect the data to tell me that my project accomplished its goal. No, that's not what we're talking about. All right. What we're talking about here is what are the telltale signs that someone's been involved in your project? All right. So like, for example, my project was addressing the brokenness that results from parental absence during a person's childhood. Mm-hmm. So hopefully, one of the things that Verifies in my project did what they need to do is, one, my project participants were able to speak about this brokenness without getting upset or angered. Two, my project participants are now at least considering getting professional counseling for the damage and the brokenness they have experienced. Mm-hmm. My project participants will take the inner child methodology and continue to refine it and develop it so that they're able to become the parent that they most wish they had. Mm. Okay, these are all. In other words, it's like, for example, you know, when you and your wife are dating, your boys and your family could tell when you've been around your wife, because guess what? You probably were smiling ear to ear. You probably mind wondering, you ain't focused and whatnot. Those are all verifications that you hung out with her. All right. Same thing here. What are the verifications that you that you were part of this project? You know what I'm saying? If you're in a project involving red paint, one of the verification is you'll have red paint all over you. You know what I'm saying? And so they don't have to, they can just give one if they want to, but they have to indicate some kind of indication that will articulate or let us know that their project did what it was supposed to do. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right. The next session 5, is the research instruments. Again, I am of the belief, Dr. Everett, that if you start with one term, throughout the process, you stick with that term, okay? Mm-hmm. We have been using the term data collection methods, all right? Mm-hmm. Research instruments are data collection methods. It's just confusing to the students sometimes because they're like, wait a second, I sat in Dr. Kennon's intensive. He never talked about any research instruments. Yeah, I did. I just didn't call them research instruments, all right? And so help, if your students come to you and say, okay, I don't have a clue as to what the research instruments are, this helped them understand that we're just talking about data collection methods.
Okay.
The first question asks them to list the data collection methods. Again, students have been going through trying to explain to me what the data collection methods are. And I'm like, you know who you're talking to, right? Just tell me. I know what the data collection methods are. Just say, 1, pre-project, post-project survey. 2, focus group discussions. Mm-hmm. 3, focus journaling, homework assignments. 4, individual interviews. 5, 3 lectures with the requirement of the participants writing a 1 to 1.5 page synopsis of what they learned or what they received from the lecture. Okay. And whatever their data collection methods are, and they could and they run the gamut, just list them. One of the things I do tell them is they need a minimum of 3. So that they can triangulate their data. There's never, ever a 2-sided triangle. So you got to have a minimum of 3. You can use as many as you want, but it's got to be a minimum of 3. Okay.
Right.
The next question asks them, will their study utilize surveys, questionnaires, or interviews? I tell them all, you might as well say yes. Mm-hmm. All right. Because all of them are doing qualitative projects, okay, which means they are exploring how the problem has impacted their participants and exploring what are possible solutions. To get that information from their people, they got to ask questions.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you might as well just go ahead and say yes. Save yourself some time. All right. The next question then asks them to insert all the content of all surveys, questionnaires, and interviews in this box. All right. So every question asked on the pre and post project survey goes in here, okay? Every group discussion topic that they're going to have their participants discuss goes in here. Every question that they anticipate asking their participants during the individual interviews goes in here. Every topic that is part of their focus journaling homework assignments goes in here. If it remotely asks the participants to provide data, it needs to go in here. All right. And again, I've never had a problem with someone putting too much. I've always had a problem with someone not putting enough for all the questions.
Okay.
So they need to put it here. Now, here's where it gets dicey on this part, okay? After they put all of the questions in this box, they're going to copy those questions and paste them in the box below, where it says, explain how each individual question you ask and each survey, interview, or questionnaire might help you to evaluate your hypothesis, okay? What this question is asking them to do is explain what is the data that you're expecting to collect from your participants by asking this question, all right? So what they'll do, they'll copy and paste the questions from above into here. Then after each question, they will say, the data that I anticipate to receive from question 1 on the pre-project, post-project survey is blah, blah, blah. The data I expect to receive on question 2 on the pre-project, but they're going to go through and they're going to do that for every single question they ask, all right? Again, that information helps us understand what is the data they're collecting and how they anticipate that data helping them assess whether or not their hypothesis address the problem or not, okay? So that's why I say it's easier if they just copy and paste their list of questions into this box, and having pasted in this box, then go through and answer what each question, the data that each question is seeking to elicit, okay? Now, this next question is a bit of a redundant question, okay? But is asking the students if they're planning to use anybody else's pre-prepared data collection method as part of their project implementation. So like down here, we have the Myers-Briggs type indicator test. Some students have wanted to use a spiritual gift inventory test. Like me, I was using methodologies from psychology. All right. So if they're using someone else's methodology, they didn't create it, they're using it, they have to indicate that yes, that they're using pre-existing data collection methods. And then in the box beneath it, what they're going to do here, they're going to give us the background information on the pre-existing data collection method. They should have already listed the questions above. All right, so that's not what we're asking here. What we're asking here is for them to give us a who, what, when, where, why, and how of the method. When was it created? Why was it created? How is it used? What are typically the things that it tests for? What is the typical data that it provides? Are there any risk with using this particular method in your project, and how do you think it will impact or contribute to the overall project? Oh, and the last one, did you get consent to use it? Now, the truth is many times the people that have created these methods that are still alive, they're not going to return emails, return calls, write you a letter back saying you can use it. What the student needs to do is to say, you know what, on September 1st, I sent a letter to Dr. Everett asking, can I use his peanut butter chocolate chip self-analysis, all right? I waited 2 weeks, got no answer. I sent another letter, but this time I sent it certified mail. I also was able to go online on United's website and find that Dr. Everett works there. It has an email address. So I emailed them at his United email address. All right. I also picked up the phone and called his secretary, and I left 4 messages with his secretary. After 45 days, I got no response from Dr. Everett. I'm reasonably assuming that he has no problems with me using his project, his research method, his data collection method.
That's good.
All right. Even if there will be occasionally 1 or 2 people that will be buttholes. Okay. They will refuse. They will not consent to the students using the data collection method. I tell the students, let us know anyway, because guess what? We may know something you don't. We may, and so like the example I gave you, let's say in that example, you wouldn't give a student the permission to use your method. Well, I may know that you're doing that only because you've got a book out and you want everyone to buy the book. Okay. And that your reason for refusal is not academically legitimate. And so I told him, so we may still end up giving you the permission that you need in order to do it. You just need to tell us what efforts you have taken to secure consent from the original creator of the data collection method.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I said that's good.
Okay. Amen. But you should see these students when we're having this discussion. Dr. Kennon, I mean, I don't want to be accused of plagiarizing. I say, you're not plagiarizing. Plagiarizing is copying someone's document word for word without giving them credit. Right. Using someone's research method is not plagiarism. I give the example all the time. You don't think that Advil, Bayer, and Motrin really recreated the wheel on finding pain medicine, do you? No, they took Tylenol's scientific method and they asked the question, what if I don't use acetaminophen? What other thing can I use? What other chemical can I use to address pain? And they just modified Tylenol's original approach and came at it from a different perspective. Same thing. The thing about academic and these kind of projects is they're really supposed to build on top of one another. You know what I'm saying? Right. Your project should point out a weakness when the previous person did it and suggest a new improved way of doing it so that someone coming behind you can either do it with no problem, or they can point out what your weaknesses are. You know what I'm saying?
It's a conversation.
Yes. Okay, so after they have given us the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the pre-existing, the next question asks them, will their surveys, questionnaires, interviews, or other materials record any information that can identify the participants? Students are checking the box no. I have them all go back and check yes. And the reason why is this: because they're doing qualitative research projects, because they are asking their participants to explore their history, their memory, their experiences, there is hardly any way for us to talk about what we've been through without telling you the other people involved. So, like, for example, when we started here this morning and explaining these 3 family reunions, you gave me information that identifies your wife's family, your family, and then your dad's mother's family. You know what I'm saying? So even though there's nothing that you gave that is so embarrassing, there may be some stuff that they give that is, if it got out, it would embarrass someone and make someone want to sue them. Okay. So like the example I give is, In 1982, during the Freedom Festival, the 4th of July Freedom Festival held in downtown Dayton, Ohio, there was a little short, bald white man named Ken Millard that ran through the crowd butt naked, screaming at the top of his lung, "Power to the people." All right. It's been now nearly 40 years since that's happened. Okay. Dr. Ken Millard has become Dr. Ken Millard, president of United. So if they put that in their paper, this story, okay, and they don't redact the information, the identifying information, then someone else is going to pick that up, and then they're going to go right to him and say, Dr. Millard, I think you need to see something. Even though it's true, it happened, it's still embarrassing, and he can still sue. All right. So I tell them, you ought to expect your participants to give you names, dates, places, addresses, and you got to be prepared that if you're going to quote them or use any of their data, to redact the identifying information out the data. Okay. The last question on section 5 asks the students to describe how they plan to safely, securely store their data once they received it, not only during the project, but during the required retention period, and then how they plan to dispose of it, as well as how they plan to redact information out of that. All right.
What is the required retention period?
I am under the impression that it's 3 years.
Okay.
But talking with Dr. Wyckoff, at least when he was in the program, he said it was 5. All right. So I tell them anywhere between 3 to 5 years. Really, and if I'm not mistaken, the D-Man manual should have that in there.
Okay.
But whatever the period is, they need a plan on protecting and storing this data for that long. All right. And they need to indicate how they plan to protect and store that data.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
We move to the next session, human subjects recruiting. These questions, section 6, these questions are simply asking what is the process that you're going to use to recruit your participants. The first question asks how many total number of participants do they expect? All right. Do they expect to have if they started tomorrow? Okay. I tell students all the time, if you're talking with your participants about your project, and you're giving them an idea of what's coming up, they're going to be talking to other people, and they're going to invite other people to come participate in your project. If it happens, don't lose. You're good. Don't lose your mind. Don't trip out. Just know that it's going to happen. And if it's going to happen, then you just be prepared to deal with it when it happens. Like I told them, I said, when I did my project, I had planted a church and we only had 12 members. That's all I expected to be there. When I showed up first day of my project, there were 32 people sitting there waiting on me.
Wow.
Yes. And so, and funny thing, I learned afterwards that more people would have been there had they learned about my project before when they did. And so I said, so don't put down the number that's your best case scenario. Put down the number of people that you have definite right now. And if you have more, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. So the next question is participant selection. Explain why and how you will select the participants for your final project. Some people are going to use pre-existing demographic questionnaires. Okay. Other people are, especially if they're not the pastors of their church, they're going to meet with their pastor, and their pastor is going to share or help them select people. Other times, your project, your students are just going to use the people that are right there with them. You know what I'm saying? That's how many of us get our participants. It's whoever is in the church at the time we implement them. It's
Right.
whoever we, all right. But if that's how they're going to do it, then that's what they need to do, is to tell us that's how we are anticipating getting our project participants. Okay.
Yeah.
The next question is, explain when and how participants are invited to participate in the project. All right. So this is where they're going to say, all right, at least 30 days out prior to implementing my project, I will hold an interest meeting, or I will send out letters to my project participants, inviting them to participate in my project and explaining what the project is, and yada yada yada. What I may do is on Sunday mornings, during the weekly announcement section, announce that I'm doing my project and that anyone that wants to participate should meet me after church in the vestibule. Okay. Mm-hmm. Just how they just need to explain how they're going to notify and invite their participants to participate with them in their project. Okay. The next question says, insert the contents of any and all recruitment documents, flyers, et cetera, that you will use to recruit in the area below. So in other words, if they're sending out letters, they're going to copy and paste the body of that letter, put it here. If they're sending out flyers, what they're going to do, they're going to put whatever information that's in the flyer in here. So the flyer gives an address, a date, a time, a contact name, and number, whatever else it says, they're going to put it in here. Whatever is in the recruitment material is what they're going to put in this box right here.
Okay.
Now, the next question is, are there any reasons you would not include a participant in your project? I tell the students to err on the side of caution and say yes. Okay. The reason why I tell them to err on the side of caution is because the federal law that has set up this whole subject recruiting, human subject recruit experiment research, has already indicated that there's certain classes of persons that are automatically suspect. All right. Mm-hmm. So those persons naturally will be children and youth. Mm-hmm. Also, and I tell them all the time, I didn't create it, so don't be mad at me. But they assume that when pregnant women are in a susceptible place to be taken advantage of, prisoners, and patients in a residential treatment facility, whether it's psychiatric or rehabilitative, whatever. But then there's also some other times, those are just listed in the statute. There's also some other times when they wouldn't want to include participants. So one example I give all the time is, you're doing a project on helping the remaining families, the survivors of drunk drivers, all right, the family members, learn to grieve in a way that helps them put their lives back together. So that's what your project is about. Basically, you got a bunch of people who've lost loved ones because of drunk driving. Mm-hmm. I said, you cannot have in your project participants that have been found guilty of drunk driving. Okay. Right. Because once the other participants find that out, they're going to put all their anger and on this person. And you, not saying it will always happen, but you may even have a situation where physical altercations jump off. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So yeah, in that case, guess what? You're going to exclude anyone that has any history with drunk driving. Okay. Wow. Mm-hmm. So same thing. If you are doing a project that's designed to help rape victims, put the pieces back together, you can't have someone in there that's been either accused or convicted of rape or physically assaulting someone. Right. Because other participants are gonna get quiet on you, or they're going to take it out on that person. And so it's really based on what it is that you are intending, the subject matter you're intending to tackle. And that dictates if there are persons that you need to exclude from your project.
Okay. Yeah.
The next box asks you to articulate what those reasons are why you would exclude the person.
Right.
Okay. All right. The next box after that asks you if the age range of your participants will be less than 18 years old or higher than 18 years old. There's nothing wrong if your participants are less than 18 years old. That just means you have to go through the extra steps of procuring consent from the parents. All right. But most of us will check 18 years or older. Several of us will check 18 years or younger. But again, no big thing. Just check one of the two. And then lastly, down at the bottom are those protected classes of persons under the federal statute.
Okay.
And so they have to indicate that. All right. The next section, 7.7, is really the last substantive section. Even though you have an 8 and 9, 8 and 9 are really not substantive. They're really just procedural.
Okay.
And so in section 7, where it's looking at how are you going to protect the participants? How are you going to ensure that they are giving you informed consent to participate in the project? And so the first question off the bat is, do you anticipate study participants will be subject to any risk? I tell them, I don't care if it's a risk of cracking their fingernails, all right, or stubbing their toe. The slightest risk that you anticipate your participants to experience, you got to list it. Okay. You got to indicate it. You got to indicate it, and then in the next box you're going to list what those risks are. So let me jump down to it. So in this second, it says describe those immediate risks, long-term risks, rationale for the necessity of such risks, alternatives that were or will be considered, and why alternatives are not feasible or will not be feasible. In other words, so now after indicating that they think there will be a risk or some risk, they now have to go through and identify what the risks are, explain if those risks are necessarily inherent in this project. What are the steps that they took to mitigate those risks? What are the alternatives? And explaining why the alternatives, even though they've gone through, why it's more advantageous for them to risk the risk than to go with an alternative. Okay. There are some times where it is completely permissible to say, okay, yes, someone may relive the pain that they experienced from this experience. However, that risk is inherent anytime they think about or reflect on this subject matter. This subject matter is designed to teach them and give them the tools they need to be able to address that pain when it arises. Yes, there are alternatives. Alternatives is not to talk about it at all, but that's the stick your ostrich head in the ground and hope it disappears approach. The better approach is to tackle it so that what happens, the history memory no longer causes pain, and that the person can continue on with life without their life stopping or ending because now they got to tackle this pain. All right. So that's an example of what they would put in that box right there. The next box asks you to describe any potential legal, financial, social, or personal impacts on subjects of accidental data disclosure. All right. So what happens? You are traveling from point A to point B. You finish your project, but you are analyzing your data, and you have a layover and you go to the Chili's in the airport and you set your computer down, and while you're eating, all of a sudden you hear over the PA system, flight 447 time has been up, we're boarding now, and you get excited, start grabbing things and leave. All right. But you leave your computer, your laptop right there on the table. Okay. Someone picks up your laptop, just so happen they are computer experts, are able to break into your laptop and get all the data off of there. And let's say you and I are famous, but we're participants. And so now they've got this data about you and I that they're trying to sell to the National Enquirer or TMZ or something like that. The students have to articulate what are the potential impacts, legal, financial, social, personal, that could occur if this data gets out.
So let me ask another question.
All right, go ahead.
So this is like 18 and older. If it was under 18, I know it doesn't have to be, but can they include an assent form for the, because they have to have, I know they would have to have permission for.
Right. I'm going to tackle that in their consent form.
Okay.
I'm going to tackle that. We in fact, we did a couple questions away from that. All right.
Okay.
But yeah, so they will list any potential legal, financial, social, personal impacts if data got accidentally disclosed. The next questions ask, what are the expected benefits, okay, of the participants participating in the project? This is what I tell them to do. Don't recreate the wheel. Remember, at the end of section 4, there was a question that says, how do you know that your participants or that your project did what it was supposed to? How will your project be verified? I tell them all the time just to copy and paste that information into here, because technically what they are going to indicate as verification that their project did what it's supposed to do is benefits. You know, the person will now be able to do this. The person will be now able to experience this. Those are all the benefits. So they don't need to recreate it. Just copy that answer, put it over here. You may have to change the terminology a little bit, but copy and paste. You know, take advantage of it. Copy. Hey, let these computers. We pay all these money for these computers. Let them do the job they're supposed to do.
Right.
All right. The next question asks, would dissection be a method of gathering data? There are some times when we implement projects or research projects where we deceive the people. Okay. The example of that is a medical company testing a drug, and they have the control group and the test group. And to the control group, they tell them that the pill they're taking is actually part of the research. But what it is really a placebo. It's just a sugar pill. It had no impact. They don't ever know it's a sugar pill, but that's deception. That's deception. All right. And sometimes it's necessary to use it. I tell them all in these projects, because you're doing qualitative research projects and because you want people to open up and share their experiences with you, you really don't want any deception at all. Because if someone believes you're lying to them, they're gonna hold back on the information. And so I tell them you really don't want to use the session, but it's okay if sometimes you have to use it, but there's really no reason for them to use it in these projects. The next question is about safeguarding the identity of the participant. Here's where we talk about the informed consent. What uses will be made of the information obtained from the project, from the participants? Again, simple. The data collected will be used solely for the purposes of assessing whether or not my hypothesis addresses and resolves the problem in my ministry context. One sentence, boom, move on. Now, the next one step is what precaution will be taken to safeguard identifiable records of individuals. This is where, remember that question in section 5 that says, how will you safely secure, store, dispose of, as well as redacting information, copy, paste the redaction part right here.
Okay.
Whoever put this together is asking redundant questions in some of this stuff. All right. The next question is, how will you ensure that your participant had enough time to make an informed decision? This is where they would say, okay, I'll send out the invitations and informed consent forms out 45 days by mail, where the participants will have 30 days from receiving the invitation and informed consent to make an informed decision. During that time, they can call me, email me, write me any question they have about the project, and I will provide them a written explanation of the project. You know, after the 30-day time period, after the 30 days have elapsed, the participants are required to return their informed consent forms, all right, indicating that they understand what this project about and they agree to participate in the project. All right. Yeah. The next question, it says, describe the procedures for obtaining informed consent. Doesn't that sound like the question before? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So again, copy and paste your answer from the question before here. It's a redundant question. What the most important question on this entire page, really this entire page could have been one question, okay, is this last one, where we want them to copy and paste the body of their informed consent form here into this box. Now, this is what I tell students. One, United is supposed to have an informed consent form on Canvas, a sample. Some of the students have been able to find it, so I direct them to go find students who've been able to find it, because I cannot find it on Canvas. And I've tried, even when the students have said it's right there, I don't see it. And it may be because I'm not a student anymore. And so I don't have that kind of access. But I tell them, if you cannot find that sample informed consent form on the Canvas, you can go to any office supply retail shop. All right. So here in Charlotte, we have Staples and Office Max, Office Depot. Other places have different office, but if you go in there, there's an aisle in those stores where they have nothing but pre-printed contracts and agreements and forms. One of the forms that they will have on that aisle is an informed consent form. And in fact, they'll usually have individual ones, and then sometimes they'll sell them as packets. I tell them to buy the packet. Okay, it may cost them $20, $30, but it's the best $20, $30 they're going to spend during their time here in this program, because in the packet are going to be multiple forms of informed consent. All right. And so they can sit down and they can read it and they can choose. I want to use section A from informed consent 1, section E from informed consent 2, and section G from informed consent 3. All right. And another thing I tell them, that these forms have been drafted by lawyers. These companies have paid lawyers to draft this stuff. If you copy word for word what these lawyers have written, you'll pass any scrutiny on your informed consent. But don't, I tell them, what you don't want to do is sit there in your cave and try to create this from scratch. Go get someone's existing informed consent form, read through it, and decide what parts of that you believe are applicable to you. All right. Section 8 is simply one question. Do the students have a financial conflict of interest in implementing this project? In other words, is Bayer, Tylenol, Advil paying you to do this project? The answer for virtually all of us is no, because none of our projects are large enough to attract the attention of of larger research companies to want to get in on this. We're not solving, we're not curing AIDS, we're not curing the coronavirus. We're doing exploratory research projects, and many times that does not garner financial interest. All right, so they should be able to say no. But let's say you're the rare person that has it. If you have someone that's going to pay you for your research project, you need to tell us. You need to tell us. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the last section is section 9. Okay. And here, what we're asking you to provide us with is the documentation that you had to submit and or receive from another IRB board. So let's say, for example, you were going to implement your project in a prison or a psychiatric ward. Well, both of those two institutions have their own IRB boards. Mm-hmm. And before you walk in there to try to implement, you've got to go through their IRB boards. So we want you basically to send us your IRB application for that board, any documents you sent along with your IRB application, any written correspondence you got back from that IRB board requesting further information, and then any approval or disapproval letters you got from them. All right, because many of us are implementing in our churches. They won't even have to answer this. This is only if you're implementing in another institution that has its own individual IRB board. Mm-hmm. Okay. After they go through, after this point, it won't show up for me because I'm I'm on staff. But at the bottom, they got 2 more boxes. One says certify and the other one says submit. They're going to click the certify button and say, you know what? I certify all the answers and information I've given are true to my best knowledge, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not deceiving, not giving any false information. All right. That's the certification. They'll click yes. All right. Then they'll click the submit button, and then it'll say, do you really want to submit? Click yes. And then what happens is sent to the IRB where we are able to then review it. And because I'm pretty much reviewing everyone's stuff, as I tell the students, I will give you focused, constructive criticism on what needs to be fixed. And I'll give it to you in detail so that you can take it and make the corrections that you need to make. But that's it. That's all I've got. You know,
that's awesome, Doc. Yeah, no, I appreciate this.
No problem. And you know what other groups have done? Because I've done it for Dr. Cothran's group. I've done it for Dr. Phil's group. I've done it for the group I'm the faculty consulting of, Prophetic Preaching and Practices, and I've done it for Dr. Marshall and Dr. Sadler's group. I've come and done this presentation.
Okay. You know?
And so, you know, like intensive during intensive, and I did it for Dr. Thomas's group too, and Dr. Reynolds. The thing during intensive, I only had so much time, so I can only do so many during intensive. But we can always schedule like a Zoom meeting.
Okay.
And we have more time, and we do this with the students. And so I tell the mentors, make sure all your students are there, because even if you got a first or second semester, they don't have to do it, but they need to be thinking about this. All right. And so feel free if you want to schedule a time with your students next semester so that we can walk through this. Let's just talk about when the time is available on our calendars, and we'll get it set up.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording right now.